This is the overview video explaining how to answer question 4 on paper 3. We'll be looking at what the examiner will be expecting and what you can do to score as many marks as you can. Now the question will always look like this. It will ask you to study interpretations 1 and 2. It will then say that they give different views about a particular topic. What is the main difference between these views? Explain your answer using details from both interpretations, and this will always be for 4 marks. All 4 marks here are awarded for AO4, which is for your analysis of interpretations and their differences. That means that you need to show the examiner that you can understand what each interpretation is trying to argue, so really get to grips with what they're trying to get across. You then need to tell the examiner what each of these ideas are and what the difference between them is. Essentially, they're assessing your ability to identify different views, but in relation to the topic that's been given to you in the question. Remember that you need to keep it focused on that. To gain full marks here, it's also important that you use details from both interpretations. So make sure you're not focusing entirely or mainly on one. Try and keep a good balance between the two to show that you've dealt with both. So what about the analysis bit? Well, in order to show that you're analytical, you need to use the substance of the interpretation. So think about what information is it trying to get across? What's the tone? Is it being particularly positive about something or particularly negative? And what is the emphasis? So what is the main idea? What are they trying to really get you to focus on? Try and take all those things into account, and that shows the examiner that you've thought about what the interpretations are arguing very carefully, and therefore you've been analytical. There's no need for you to bring in any historical context or evidence from your own knowledge, or to think about who wrote it or anything like that. Nothing contextual, it's just the content of the interpretation itself. Remember, this is only 4 marks, so you don't need to write absolutely loads. Just try and keep a very tight focus on the difference between the interpretations. We can also see here the bands for this question. So in the bottom band, it says that we've got little analysis. So maybe you just haven't really explained your thinking very clearly. You might have made some comments about difference, but you just haven't explained it very clearly to the examiner, so they're not really sure what you're arguing. Maybe you've taken a couple of extracts from the source or just tried to paraphrase what it says, but you haven't explained why that's relevant, why that links to the topic, or why that makes it different to the other source. And finally, you've stated your difference, but you haven't quite supported your answer. So make sure that you're bringing in evidence from the source, you're explaining your thinking. You're just trying to make it as easy as possible for the examiner to see what you're arguing and therefore give you the marks. Let's take a look at an example. This question says, study interpretations 1 and 2. They give different views about the stability of the Weimar Republic in the 1920s. What is the main difference between these views? Explain your answer using details from both interpretations. 4 marks. This would be the mark scheme for this question. Now, as a general rule, you're trying to make it as clear as possible what you're trying to argue to the examiner. So a good structure is to state what you think the difference is, state what it does in interpretation 1, what it does in interpretation 2, and then sum up why that makes them different. So you're making it really, really clear. So for this question, they've said that a main difference is that interpretation 1 suggests that the Weimar government had had some success in stabilising the political turmoil in the immediate aftermath of World War I, owing particularly to Stresemann and his establishment of some degree of unity within the Reichstag. So we've gone into a fair bit of detail there, and if you can pluck out bits of detail from the source, like maybe some quotes or things like that, makes it really clear and shows that you've explained it fully. Now we need to discuss interpretation 2. So the tone is more cynical here, and that suggests that stability was an illusion created by foreign aid. Unemployment and social problems were still rife. And then a final statement just to sum all of that up, to link it back to the idea of stability in the Weimar Republic in the 1920s, because that's what the questions asked us to focus on. And that is a fantastic 4 mark answer.